Hi guys, my name is Anna and today I'm going to be filming my first ever wrap-up video. So I've always enjoyed watching wrap-up videos, but I've never gotten around to reading enough books in a month that I really wanted to talk about in one video. But for this month, August, I finally have, so I'm going to be uploading my first ever wrap-up video for this channel. So the first book I read this month is Mothership. So this was a kind of futuristic book about teen pregnant girls living on this kind of camp in space where they all cope with their pregnancy, but then chaos ensues when aliens attack the ship and we find out that the babies might not be human babies after all, and there's just all kinds of crazy madcap hilariousness happens. I would say there's not much substance to this book, but it certainly was a fun read. I sat down and read through it in just one sitting, and it helped me get out of the terrible reading slump that I'd been in last month, so I will give that for it. It's not one I would reread, and I don't think I'm going to continue on with the series, even though it ends in a cliffhanger. I thought it was going to be a standalone, but apparently they somehow managed to stretch out pregnant teenagers and aliens into an entire trilogy. I'm not sure how. But even though I did enjoy the book, I just didn't find enough in it where it really hooked me in where I wanted to go on and read the next one. But if you're in the mood for just this madcap, crazy crack of a book, go ahead and give it a shot. You might really like it. I found some comparisons to Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. I wouldn't say it's quite as good, but it was definitely a fun read. The next book I read this month was Perfect Ruin by Lauren DeStefano. But this book is really a genre bender. I think it's dystopian, but it might also be fantasy. It is about our main character who is living on a floating island in the sky that was thought to have been taken up from the ground by a god because the people living upon it were the chosen ones and they were better than the other people on the ground. The majority of this book is simply about our main character living her daily life in this bizarre society that is on this floating island. In some ways it's futuristic because they have all this technology, but in some ways it's very backwards because there are very set, gender roles and some of those kind of things that you wouldn't expect for a society that seems fairly futuristic. This society also believes that free will is kind of the beginning of evilness of humankind, so everyone's very much so given certain roles within their society to try and eliminate any harm that anyone can do. Kind of like The Giver a bit. I wouldn't say it was as good as The Giver because I felt The Giver was a little bit more universal in age range. I felt like any age could find something to appreciate in The Giver, whereas this book did feel very much so like a teen book. I don't know if it would translate quite as well to an older reader. That being said, the book was pretty slow for the first half of it. It took to the last half for things to really get going, and it ends in a cliffhanger. And I do definitely plan on reading the next one. I do kind of hate how it gave me this melancholy feeling after reading it, but I still enjoyed it. I liked the exploration of all the characters and the building of this really interesting world that the author has created. So I'm definitely interested in reading the next one. I'm a little conflicted on how I feel about it overall. This is definitely one I have to read the entire series before I can give my definite opinion on it. The next book I read was Orphan Queen by Jodi Meadows. This was a book that sounded so fantastic to me but didn't fully live up to my expectations. It's a revenge medieval fantasy kind of plotline where this princess whose kingdom has been conquered and her parents have been murdered, and she has grouped together with the noble children who have escaped and have banded together to try and take over the kingdom and get back their own kingdom from it. However, all the side characters frustrated me really, except for the main character. She has this friend who's supposed to be helping her and her team take back her kingdom, and yet she just doesn't seem like she was really that much of a true friend. And then she also has this leader who was the son of some big general within her kingdom, but he is very bossy, and there's almost this, he's kind of manipulative where he almost treats her more as she's a figurehead, and he's going to be the one that's going to be in charge of the kingdom when they take it back. So I didn't really like any of the side characters. However, I did really enjoy the world building in this story. In it, magic is illegal because the use of magic causes this magical, dark pollution that will turn the weather insane and will mutate animals and people into these monstrous creatures. So that's a side plot line that's going on because more and more the world is being covered as a result from magic users with this dark magic pollution, and it is closer and closer to covering all of the world in the little pockets that humanity is left with. For a good majority of this book takes place where our main character and her friend are pretending to be refugees from these polluted areas of the world and have come into the capital and are living in the castle of the king and kingdom who actually took over her kingdom. It's interesting how everything plays out, and at the end bit of the book where there's those huge fight scenes, some of the magical pollution makes it into the main city that everyone lives in, and everything kind of comes to a head, and there's all these revelations about who everyone is. And once that happens, I was really enjoying it, but it really took till that end bit of it where the excitement was actually amped up for me to really be enjoying the book and say, all right, I'm with it now. I would say I found a lot of comparisons to Throne of Glass. I wouldn't say it's as good as Throne of Glass, definitely, because I only really enjoyed it towards the very end. However, the end was so much better that I do plan on reading the next book whenever it comes out, and I'll see where the series goes, and maybe like Throne of Glass, it'll get better and better with each book. The next book I read this month is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. So this is one I picked up because the cover was gorgeous, and I had read the summary on the back of the book a while ago, but I didn't really remember what it was about, and I am so glad I picked this one up because it's by far the favorite I've read all month. It is about a teen girl whose father is murdered for his device that he and her mom has invented that allows someone to jump between parallel universes. You know, there's that theory or whatever that every decision you make creates an entire alternate universe that you would live in based on what decisions you made, and some would be really tiny, like what you ate for breakfast, and then some would be huge, as in Hitler managed to win World War II. The book did a fantastic job with writing and pacing. This book hits the ground running. You start off and the action is going, and it's explained along the way as you're running after trying to kill people. I mean, it is going. And I loved all the characters. I loved the explanation of how the worlds worked and how we got to see all these different dimensions. You know, we got to see the ones that were barely different and then the ones that were radically different. I loved getting to know different versions of the same people and the same characters and each dimension, and it kind of challenges, you know, the nature versus nurture question of, because in this universe, in an alternate universe, your nature is the same, but what you've gone through is different, so how much of that is based on that? And I thought that was an interesting question that was kind of gone throughout the book. I loved it from beginning to end. It really had no slow parts, in my opinion. I loved all the characters. I cannot wait until the next book comes out. I think it comes out in a couple months, and I'm super duper excited to be reading it. Definitely, if you're going to check out any of the books I've mentioned in this video, check this one out. The last book I read this month is Far From You by Tess Sharpe. So this is an unusual genre choice of a book for me. This book is also a contemporary and a mystery, and I normally kind of steer clear of those, but I read this one for my monthly book club, and I ended up being really glad I did. This follows a recovering drug addict who witnesses her best friend's murder, and the entire book is about her trying to deal with her addiction and trying to find her friend's killer, and they may have or may not have been more than friends and their struggle within that. I loved the struggles that all these characters went through, especially the main character. I felt heartbroken for her and everything she went through, and the people not believing her when she told them she was clean and blaming her, thinking it was a drug deal gone bad is the reason why her friend was murdered, instead of the fact that the friend mysteriously went out into the forest following some lead for a newspaper article that she was writing. And the writing was really, really good. It jumped around in time a lot. It would go from way far in the past to really close to present day, what was going on in the book. And it showed the development of all the characters' relationships, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. My favorite character was by far the main character, the narrator. I wasn't quite sure about her friend Nina, and because she would be so encouraging and so wonderful, and yet she had this really manipulative side to her that made me feel, I don't quite get why you're so enamored with this friend and why you feel so loyal to her. But sometimes we love people even when they aren't always necessarily what's best for us or what's nice to us. Anyway, those were all the books I read this month. This was actually a pretty decent reading month for me. I will sometimes go through and read like 15 books a month, but this is slightly above my average reading month, especially since I was in a reading slump like the past 2 months before that. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this channel's first ever wrap-up video, and this one is for August. Check out some new videos that I'm going to have coming up very soon. I am going to be having a huge book haul coming up for my birthday book haul that happened just a few days ago, and I'm also going to be putting up a review of Queen of Shadows, the latest Throne of Glass book. As soon as it releases, I will be reading it and uploading my opinions on it to the world. Anyway, bye guys!